Hello, internets and YouTubes and all that good stuff. Matt here, as always, along with Christian.
Hello.
Okay, he whispered for some reason. Uh, anyway, we have a jam-packed night for you guys tonight, and yeah, that's going to be fun. So, real quick, before we get started, though, we are doing election night coverage, sort of. Christian has class till, unfortunately, 10 at night. I am working with one of my local campaigns, and there's a party. I don't know how long I'm going to stay there. Probably not too late. Probably get back to my house somewhere between 9 and 10. Uh, but we'll get started around then, and we'll start, do our bogus political commentary as results come in. And yeah, try not to cry together. Uh, at the state of our politics, like we have been for the last year. All right. Anyway, like I said, a lot of stories this week, so we're going to try to save some of them for individual videos that we'll do eventually, I guess. Anyway, Christian, would you like to lead us off with
Oh,
the first story in the Google sheet?
all right. This is different. So, let's get into this. This is from the CBC. Like every major news outlet in the Western world, they've been, covering the U.S. election because it matters to everyone else. And they were recently at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. Is that really what it's called? I guess it's Mobile, Alabama, really. Not
it, it's it,
yeah.
it's yeah, I believe it's pronounced mobile, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Huh. Anyways,
I'm not from the South.
this is true. None of us are. I'm the opposite of the South. Anyways, and there's a sorority there called Alpha Gamma Delta. That really sounds like the most stereotypical possible name for a sorority. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but everyone does though.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure there's one called like Phi Kappa Phi, and it's like, really? Okay. Anyway,
um. Anyways, they basically are this mainly a sorority made of first-time voters because mainly based off when elections occur in the U.S. and how old they are. And they're all in it for Trump. They are hardcore Republicans. Last year, they were out, you know, lobbying to try and get guns on campus, allow concealed firearms on campus. Uh,
because that's the real problem. That's the real problem. It's not that sexual assault is a problem on campuses. Or you need a gun. You need a
yeah,
gun, definitely.
yeah. But they describe themselves as, you know, women who believe in equal rights. They're in university, so they theoretically should be educated, I guess. But nonetheless, somehow they believe you should be voting for Trump. Uh, they're one of those. They're the kind of women who are like, we don't believe in feminism, but we believe in equal rights. And I just sit there and say, I feel like they mean the same thing. But anyways, but I just reading this article, there's a few things that I found very interesting. Um, CBC, of course, was quick to point out that despite this rare case, if just women voted, Clinton would win 458 electoral votes. So it's not as if they represent the majority or even the plurality of women in the US as far as who they're going to vote for. But it's nonetheless interesting to see what women who would vote for Trump, where their mindset is. Basically, they brought up the classic, well, the argument Trump's been trying to bring up since the tape released of him saying some rather ugly remarks about women. They're like, look, if you're going to believe all the accusations of sexual assault against Trump, you have to believe the ones who accused Bill Clinton as well. That first one I just find very frustrating, and I wanted to get into that because Bill Clinton's not running for president. Hillary Clinton's running for president. And you might not like that Hillary Clinton stayed with her husband after he did those things. All right. But I think you'd also be going against, I think you'd have a lot of people getting angry at her because she left her husband. Not and not only that, that doesn't speak to any of her capacity to be a good president. That's what her husband did. She's her own woman. If you really were in favor of equal rights for women, I'd hope you'd understand that. But I don't know. You say you're not feminist, so maybe you weren't really actually for equal rights for women. I don't know. The other thing I find, so yeah, that it all goes back to that core problem. I just don't understand why that's a fair counterpoint, because that's Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton's running for president. It doesn't matter what he did. You're not voting for him. You're voting for her. Unless you think she's so weak and incompetent that her husband would really be running things, which I struggle to believe that.
No, I think they genuinely believe that's the case. That she's so incompetent, especially with this whole email non-scandal, that Bill Clinton, obviously, since he's the man, he'd be the guy running the country.
Yeah. It's frustrating. So frustrating.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, did you?
No, go
ahead.
You
have? Well, here's the thing: is that there are a loud, vocal minority of women who are very, very fervently in support of Trump, and it's very, very sad to see, because they so obviously struggle to try and defend their clearly misguided position on that.
Yeah.
And they get very amped about that, and it's because, and I hate to be this sort of condescending, know-it-all, liberal, blah, blah, blah. They're filled with a lot of self-hatred. That they're filled with a lot of, they've grown up in the society that we have, probably, in even worse conditions in more, I guess you could say, traditional areas, believing that women are subservient, to one degree or another, subservient to men, and therefore they can't hold office, they can't do anything, and it's very sad to me, to see happen, because you try. It's one thing when we talk about people going against their own self-interests, if they're people on welfare who are voting for Republicans or what have you, or working class people voting for Republicans, whatever. But when a candidate so clearly, so obviously has no respect for women whatsoever, or a certain group, and members of that group support him anyway, it's very, very, very sad. At least with when it comes to illegal immigration, a lot of the Latino voters who are going for Trump, it's because they think the illegal immigrants make them look bad.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of logic in that, and it's a little more understandable. With women, it's just, he doesn't think you're human.
Yeah.
He doesn't think that you're a person. He thinks you're an object.
Well, it's interesting. I'll just let you keep going after this, but one of the girls in the sorority is Lanny Kosick. She has a website, which I am now going to do a video about, because I went to her website and I was like, these are frustrating arguments that you're making. They're not very good. But anyways, she said, you go to a party any day and there's fraternity guys, any guys grabbing girls, doing this and that. I don't think it's out of the normal realm of things. I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay, even if it is, if even if it isn't out of the normal realm of things, that doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yep.
That's the thing with this whole locker room talk thing, is that people say, "Oh, well, everybody does it."
Yeah.
Appeal to popularity much? Just
Yeah.
because it's popular doesn't mean it's okay. Like what? Ah, you know what was popular at the time that it started? The Iraq War.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it was a good idea.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that. That's normal for you in your community. For me, that's not normal. When I go to a party, that's not acceptable. That's no. So I think I think you're actually hurting yourself more. You're showing that there are some places where this is a problem, and you're saying, look, I don't think it's a problem, and you're allowing that to grow and go to other areas. You're allowing that culture to be deemed acceptable because you yourself don't have a problem with it. But I think a lot of women probably do have a problem with it. So yeah, that's not a good argument at all. That's yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's about as much as I have to say on it. Just yeah, it's just sad.
It is. It is sad.
Okay. Speaking of which, Christian's going to tell you how. So, one thing I just want to interject within a little anecdote, and they're going to be spread out a little bit throughout these stories that we do tonight. Uh, because a lot has happened this week, and of course it is because this week is the week leading up to the election, or this past week was, and more, I thought I didn't think it was as much of a problem as it actually is, and I unfortunately didn't realize it till just recently. Is that there are so many people who say, "Oh, well, both Clinton and Trump are bad." Well, yeah, neither of them are very good candidates, but they are in no way on the same level. They're in no way the on an equal footing in terms of how bad they are, how bad their policies are, how bad their experience is. They're still, they're still not the best we could be doing, but there is no equivalency, which is why I am voting. I'm I'm swallowing the pill and I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, unfortunately. But Christian's going to lead into that because he had a very nice article from McLean's about that.
So yeah, basically it's by Ann Kingston. Check her out. And basically, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. Sorry, I have the John Oliver changes Trump to Drumpf all the time for me. So when I go to read, I'm like Donald Trump. No. So she opens it with this really good quote where it's from a British comedian by the name of David Sedaris, and he goes, "Would you like the chicken or would you like the human feces with broken glass in it?" To which someone responds, "Well, how is the chicken cooked?" And basically she's goes on to explain how there's been this sort of groupthink and how Clinton's been covered, and it's sort of skewed the way people are perceiving this election. There's been a lot of, she's been described as flawed or deeply flawed or corrupt a lot. Or even and unlikable. When in reality, compared to who she's running, like the main argument against her right now are emails on someone else's computer that she didn't send, may be investigated in relation to another person. That's the big thing right now.
By the way, she was just exonerated by that, or not exonerated, but like the FBI was like, "Yeah, we're not pressing charges."
Yeah. Meanwhile, the person she's running against has been accused of racketeering and child molestation. He is a sexual predator. He hasn't released his tax returns. He's used his foundation, which isn't a certified charity, to pay his legal fees. And let's remember, the Clinton Foundation is a certified charity with a 90% pass-through rate, which is really good. And he attacked the family of a war hero. But apparently, the emails Hillary Clinton didn't send on someone else's computer, apparently that's... I think that's a good piece of perspective about this whole campaign. It's crazy that this is even close, but I think she's making a good point that the media is wanting to make this a horse race. The media trying to cover this as if, because I think there's this false equivalency in U.S. politics where they confuse... well, it's not even U.S. It's probably writ large. It's just this is a very stark example of it, where there's this confusion with presenting the truth and being in the middle. They're not the same thing. Sometimes, and I'm sure this is been said for a while now, sometimes the truth is just doesn't portray one of the two sides in a good light. It's going to portray one of the two sides in a better light. Perhaps that's always going to happen. And I think the attempt to try and portray the two sides in equally good light has been pretty damaging in so many ways. Because what you do is you just move the bar. You're basically trying to portray someone who's been accused of, sexually assaulting children. You're trying to say that's equal to Hillary Clinton not being charged on the email scandal. That's the thing. I don't know if you saw this, and it goes to this. There was a clip from CNN this week. I'm going to try and see if I can find it. But basically, the host is trying to say that he holds Hillary Clinton to a higher standard because she's a woman. And it was funny because even the Trump supporter on the panel, because, as you do, you have a Trump supporter and a Clinton supporter at all times, in all things. Even she was like, are you sure about that? So either it's like a sexist thing where it just writ large, everyone's holding Clinton to a higher standard because she's a woman, which is what this guy on CNN, here we go, Chris Cuomo, that's who it was.
Oh, Chris Cuomo,
yeah.
He's usually he's pretty good, most of the time.
Except not this time.
Yeah, well, the other thing you have to take into consideration is his brother is also the governor of New York, so.
Yeah. But yeah, he said he expects better behavior. I think that's part of the problem. It goes to actually a quote actually from that Lanny Kosick woman we were talking about earlier. It's this whole, well, the things that Trump is doing wrong, I guess I'm supposing Republican or conservative circles, that actually isn't wrong. That's fine. Boys be boys. That's what they do. But Hillary Clinton, she's a woman, and the thing, and she has to be godlike to be acceptable because she's going outside of her role. I feel like I never really subscribed to the whole argument that, well, the people who dislike Clinton are disliking her because she's a woman. But I think I'm beginning to see that, is what I'm saying in part. I think it's so what I'm sort of concluding is that there's two things going on, and I think this is sort of what Ann Kingston is getting to in our article. There's the element of the horse race where you want to cover both sides evenly, even when you shouldn't. You should be just telling the truth, and sometimes the truth is going to paint one side significantly better than the other. But there's also this angle of, well, she's a woman, and we're just going to hold her, just as a society, we're holding her to a different standard than the man she's running against.
Yeah, so this is, I think, I want to say I alluded to this a week or two ago after I watched the PBS Frontline documentary, which, again, if someone watching hasn't, you guys definitely should, on Trump and Clinton. It's about 2 hours long. Very good. It kind of goes fast, but it's good. It gives you a better understanding of who they are as people. And Hillary Clinton, from the beginning, has tried to be a woman in a man's world. Now, obviously, society has changed significantly since she first became the First Lady of Arkansas. But she's had these challenges in front of her all of her life. She was blamed in part for Bill Clinton losing re-election as governor of Arkansas initially, and because she didn't take his name. She was still Hillary Rodham at the time. She had a weird hairstyle, weird glasses, and this is the 70s. This is the 70s we're talking about, and people were saying her glasses and hair were weird, so you know something's up. And she still had her own job. She was an attorney in her own right, or a lawyer in her own right. And she was very much her own person. And she seemingly has always tried to be that, especially when Bill Clinton became president, and then when she became the senator from New York. That's very evident. And I do think people hold her to a higher standard because she's a woman. I think it's a mix, like you said, it's a mix of both that and not necessarily the horse race, but there's always this need to have two sides to every argument in the United States, no matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
There is no nuance. The only nuance is are you a moderate or an extremist
Mm-hmm.
in your faction? There is no nuance beyond that. You're either a moderate Republican or an extreme Republican. You're either a moderate Democrat or extreme Democrat. There is no nuance in there, and there needs to be. Because you're exactly right, Christian. Climate change, for instance. We still have a great number of people, a great number of elected officials saying climate change isn't real. Well, no, you're wrong. You're simply wrong. There is no argument anymore. Climate change is real. We can be having a discussion about what we should do about it, if we should do anything about it. That's a reasonable discussion. And there are many, many different sides to that. Many, many different perspectives. But the way that we've framed it for some reason is the discussion is climate change real, is it not? Even though we should be well beyond that question, and secondly, have way more than just two sides to it. But that's what we've done. We've kind of been setting this up for however many years. Because Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were nowhere near on the same playing field. And yet, because they're the nominees of the two major parties, they're on the same pedestal, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It's frustrating. It is super frustrating to watch. That's all I can say. At the end of the day, choose the chicken. Don't ask how it was cooked, because the alternative is human feces with broken glass in it.
I mean, we could have gotten a nicer chicken, a chicken with some, herbs on it.
Yeah.
That's Bernie Sanders. But no, we got the deli chicken that you get from your local supermarket that sometimes smells like rat.
But at least it's still chicken.
Yeah, and it's still eatable.
Yeah.
Like, it's edible. Like,
yeah.
it just smells. It's not necessarily has anything to do with rat. Anyway, to go off of that point, I want to point our attention to a Mother Jones article from August 1st. So this is a while back. But this article has a comparison chart. Unfortunately, or never mind. Yeah, he is. And it has a comparison chart of basically every significant Republican in the in U.S. elections since 2012. How many PolitiFact rated the percent of their comments they've made by PolitiFact that have been rated, pants on fire, false, mostly false, half true, mostly true, true. along with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Bernie Sanders. And the fascinating thing is, so the people at the top of the chart are those that often lie the most, whether it's pants on fire, false, or mostly false. And then the people at the bottom are obviously the opposite. Now, obviously, these are politicians, so none of their numbers look particularly great. But Hillary Clinton has often been slammed as someone who lies a lot, right?
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, on this PolitiFact chart, she's actually second from the bottom. Barack Obama only being the more honest politician than her. Now, the way they calculate that is a bit wonky, especially because Bernie Sanders appears to have no pants on fire comments, even though he's above her, which is strange. But nevertheless, it appears that only about 1, maybe 2% of her comments are pants on fire. About 10% are false. About the same are mostly false. About 15 are half true. And then the rest, which is about 51% of her comments, are either mostly true or true. Now compare that to Donald Trump, where almost 20% of his comments are pants on fire. A good about 40% are just false. About 10% are mostly false, and he only has a meager about 13% that are anywhere near true. And Hillary Clinton is the lying candidate. Okay.
Well, here's the thing, and this is not a defense of Trump. This is just a thought on the Clinton side of it. Is I think when people say they think she's not honest, it's because the drastic shift in her positions, if you just go back to like 2003 to now, is dramatic. Or there's the classic case of Elizabeth Warren brought up where Hillary Clinton was in support of, I can't remember exactly what that was.
It was, yeah, it was, I want to say it had something to do with insurance. I can't remember, but she convinced Hillary Clinton to convince Bill Clinton to veto it. And then when she was in the Senate, she voted in favor of it.
Yeah, because she talked to the people in the industry. So I think that's what people are talking about. Is because I think Hillary Clinton is she's playing a really mean game of realpolitik, and that's all she's doing, and it's very hard to tell what she actually supports. Because the thing is, she doesn't actually lie about what she doesn't lie when she's explaining something or saying a fact, which I think is what PolitiFact is saying. But, when you think of what her positions were, she shifts quite dramatically. Like gay marriage, for example, if you go back to the early 2000s to 2008 to 2012 to now, that's like, woo, okay. I don't know. Like, I think that's what people are getting at. As opposed to, I think PolitiFact's just saying, look, if you just go by, like, when she says X is going on in the world, she's probably telling you the truth.
Yeah. See, I'd like to... So, this was shortly after the primary, so that's probably what it's talking about. And I think when you talk about in terms of the left with her reputation, that's certainly true.
Yeah.
And I definitely give that to you. But when it comes to people on the right, I find more often than not, when they're talking about her lying, they're talking about the various scandals that she's gotten involved in. They don't necessarily care about the Wall Street speeches or her flip-flopping on issues. In fact, I've very rarely heard flip-flop come from the right in this election. It's always the emails. It's always Benghazi. It's always these BS controversies that never prove anything, that never prove she did anything inherently legally or even sometimes ethically wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, but they're so convinced that she has done something wrong, and apparently she's like a mob boss, and nothing sticks to her. They have to, get her on tax evasion, apparently. But
Except she released her taxes, so they can't even do that.
yeah, see, it's an interesting point my dad brought up to me is that the Republicans view her essentially as a mob boss, and they're just trying to get her on something.
Yeah.
Because in their minds they know, quote unquote,
Yeah.
that she's done something wrong. So
Yeah.
they're trying to bag her for that.
Yeah. It actually brings up an interesting thought. If you guys haven't seen it, I actually did a call-in with Jason Valey, who's a Republican radio show host once, and we had a chat about money in politics and how it affects politicians. And it was fascinating because Jason Valey, who will go on this vindictive rant about how it was funny because even in that very episode, he was complaining about how Republican politicians don't listen to their base. And I said, well, Jason, do you not see how money in politics might have something to do with the Republicans not, listening to their base? He said, oh, well, I'm on the right, so I don't believe money in politics matters. Ignoring how hilarious, it's like, no, I don't need to prove it's wrong. Simply the fact that I'm on the right should be enough reason for you to understand I don't believe this is a problem. But aside from that, I think it gets to that. This whole this disconnect between passing. I guess my best way to put it is they don't understand how there's something systematically wrong, or they refuse to believe there's something systematically wrong. So that means that if a politician is doing something they don't like, they must be a bad person. If you believe there's no systematic problem, or if you don't believe that there's any valid reason to not support, there's no valid reason to not have the same ideology as you, then the only conclusion you're left with is that person is simply done something wrong, and you're going to find out eventually what they've done wrong. Because that's the only way I can explain that.
Yeah, I just it annoys me because it's not just congressional Republicans, professional Republicans that are going after her. It's everyday people, everyday Republicans, common people. And yeah, I get it. They can't necessarily attack her from the left like we do occasionally because they aren't on the left. But nevertheless, there are things, we just talked about. There are things you can definitely hit her on.
But I think the thing is that the very politicians they would provide as an alternative to her have done the same or worse. So it's very hard.
I think that's probably, everybody talked about the WikiLeaks thing because obviously that was huge. Mm-hmm. But that's probably why they didn't even, they kind of went on it for about a week, maybe, a news cycle, and then kind of gave up. Probably because the same sort of nasty things that we saw in those emails, they probably said themselves too.
Yeah.
Like this is a predominantly Protestant nation.
Yeah.
You really think a lot of them have very good views of Catholics? Yeah. I'd imagine probably not.
Well,
they've probably said worse things than John Podesta said.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the thing is there's a struggle to come up with good arguments just because the guys you support in alternative would have done the same things. Even then, to that point, it's not as if we blame secretaries of state for terrorist attacks that occur under their watch very often. I don't know why in this one case it was decided that this is her fault.
Neither, because she's a woman, probably. But and the only reason why I didn't attack Condoleezza Rice for it is because they were on her side.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was one of the good guys. Look at my good African American right here.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to how the right has become more and more just absolutely rabid over the past 30 years. So that's a different story.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let me get into my little rant right now.
Yeah, for rant.
I think we've had enough time to build up to it. So we're over the past 2 weeks, people have been freaking out because it's almost election day and polls have narrowed significantly. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, Clinton had not just a double-digit lead, a 14-point lead in some polls over Donald Trump. The worst, I think, had her 8 points up from him around that time. Now they are dead even in national polls. First things first, national polls don't matter, but that's a different discussion. People are absolutely losing their minds. And for people who say, and these are a lot of people, almost everybody blames the media for making this election, for skewing this election one way or the other, whether it's people say, oh, they're skewing it for Hillary. No, reality is skewing it for Hillary. Sorry. Or, just because they're making it out to be more exciting and more nail-biting than it actually is. A lot of people seem to be buying the hype for some reason, which I see to be a bit hypocritical, but hey, who listens to us anyway? But to my point, so first of all, yeah, you should be scared because the prospect of a Trump presidency is real. It's scary, and you should do everything in your power, whether by supporting a third-party candidate or supporting Hillary Clinton or doing whatever, to make sure that he does not win the White House. That being said, 14-point leads 3 weeks out don't just disappear overnight. You know why? When you're 2 weeks out from an election, every freaking time polls narrow. That's just what happens. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it's what happens in the United States. Every single time. Well, in the rest of the world, at least the Western world, typically have better polls. But different discussion there. Not to mention, most of the time, people are saying, oh, well, even the people who say, yeah, national polls don't matter, they go state by state, and they say, oh, well, now he's leading in New Hampshire. Okay, well, let's see the sample size for that. Oh, 500 people. That's pretty bad. That's usually not a good indicator of a poll. Most good polls have close to 1,000 people being in the sample size. What's after that? What's the margin of error? Oh, 4%. That's bad. Okay, what's Trump's lead? 2 points. Okay, first of all, that's in the margin of error. Second, that is one of the shittiest polls that can be put out there. Like, what are people just... I had a lot of faith in a lot of people, especially because when Trump first came out, a lot of people were against him, right?
Yeah.
And I figured that's because people are decent and they understand politics, they understand the process. Apparently not. If anything, this last year and a half has shown is that I have vastly overestimated the intelligence of people when it comes to politics. So many people don't understand. People are writing in Bernie Sanders for president, and to hijack another short story that we're going to do. Your vote is invalidated if you do that. Because in the majority of states, if you're going to be a write-in candidate for president, you need to be registered with the state's Secretary of State. So if you write someone's name in who isn't a registered write-in candidate, spoiler, Bernie Sanders isn't, because he isn't running for president anymore, not only that vote, your entire ballot is invalid. Do you really, honestly, want to do that? No. Then don't write in people who aren't registered write-in candidates. And also, don't just look at a poll and think it's immediately indicative of what's going on. I see plenty of people are saying, "Oh, well, Trump's going to win. It's over. Trump's going to win." No. 2 weeks ago, Clinton had a 14-point lead. There was absolutely nothing. Of course, it's an election. Days leading up to it, there are always controversies. There was nothing big enough to sink her lead that fast, that hugely. So you know what that means? It might not be a blowout. Tuesday might not be a blowout, but Clinton is going to win. Again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go out and vote. You should definitely go out and vote and make sure Trump doesn't win, no matter what that means to you. But she's going to win. It's reality. It's the reality of the situation. On to that. So I know you guys, if you guys have been following this show, Christian's big source is foreign policy. My big source has been The Hill. They seem like very relatively objective and sensible sources for news this election. That was true during the primary season for The Hill. Now that we're, about a month out, or we've been a month out, and succeeding up to that, The Hill has jumped, unfortunately, on the horse race bandwagon. And the way I can tell is because about 2 weeks ago when Clinton's lead vanished, they're like, "Oh, Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win." And then the next article I saw them was, "Oh, Clinton's 5 points up. Nothing to worry about here." And I'm like, "What? Oh, what? Why? Why?" And even Nate Silver has jumped on that bandwagon. Before this all happened, he had Nevada leaning pretty significantly Clinton. Same thing with North Carolina and even Florida. Now those are all leaning Trump. First of all, she can lose Florida and even North Carolina and possibly even New Hampshire and still win, which is pretty interesting how that electoral math works out. Nevertheless, that's not going to happen. Yeah, she might lose a few of those. They're battleground states. They're going to be close. That's the reality of the situation. I saw Kellyanne Conway, his campaign manager, talking about recounts shit. Like, there's not going to be a recount. This isn't 2000. It's not happening. Clinton is going to win. That was the reality when this campaign started. The general election campaign, that is. And that's going to be the reality now. Trump very rarely led her in either national or state-by-state polls during the entire general election. There is absolutely no way that suddenly changes with just 2 weeks out. That makes absolutely no sense. And you know what? If I end up being wrong, then you know who not to trust when it comes to election predictions.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, I've lived through 2 of these already, 2 election cycles. And when it comes to a presidential election, voter turnout is usually very high, comparatively. And if voter turnout is high, Clinton wins. If there's low voter turnout, she's probably still going to win, but it's going to be much closer. And the thing is, from how early voting has been going, how hyper-partisan, hyper-inflated this campaign has been, I'm guessing there's going to be high voter turnout. And that means Trump's going to lose. He's going to be an even bigger crybaby. He's going to cry all the way back to Trump Tower because he's going to get his ass handed to him by a woman.
I always say that is like my favorite element of this story of this election is that there's no better person for Trump to lose to than Hillary Clinton.
See, that's why I said she should have had a Hispanic on the ticket.
That is so true.
I mean, she did well with Tim Kaine because he can speak Spanish. He can speak pretty good Spanish, so that's a plus. But if she had Julian or Joaquin Castro or Xavier Becerra on the ticket, or even Antonio Villaraigosa, then she would be pretty set up for having the most symbolic ass kicking of probably of the 21st century. Unfortunately, she didn't do that. But, beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little election rant. Any thoughts, Christian, before we go on to the next story?
No, I'm not going to take any time that we don't have.
Well, because of my rant and because of the number of stories we have, we can probably extend the time a little bit.
Okay. Well, I would say, wow, that was a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I just realized I'm pretty sure I just ranted for a solid 10 minutes.
Yeah. I guess my thought out of that is just don't get discouraged by what you just no matter what you see, because I know for sure that the Republicans are actively trying to suppress the vote because it simply is the way that usually the Labor or the left-wing party wins when more people vote. So
yeah,
don't get discouraged. Actually go and vote because not voting is exactly what they want. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, I wasn't a Democrat, but I was a Sanders supporter. Well, look, all right, that's cool. That's cool, man. You know what? Hillary Clinton, a lot closer to Bernie Sanders than Donald Trump. So Bernie Sanders is going to have a lot more power in the Senate if Hillary Clinton is president.
But what about Jill Stein, man? Jill Stein, 2016.
The Green Party has done no work to try and capitalize on this election to build any sort of no. Yeah.
Okay, I know a lot of our viewers are in favor of Jill Stein and the Green Party, and for a time we were too. They have made no traction. They're not going to win. I'm sorry, that's the reality of it. And if you really are just with the two-party system that much that you'll still vote for Jill Stein or Gary Johnson or whoever, right? That you refuse to vote for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. If you believe that right up to Election Day and even past it, then get involved. Actually make them viable parties, because right now Jill Stein and even Gary Johnson aren't doing that. They come up every 4 years just to run, and then they don't do jack shit afterwards.
Yeah.
Real movements, especially grassroots movements, are built on community activism and community organizing. If you just run for the highest office of the land every year and spout off popular talking points, yeah, you'll get a decent chunk of the popular vote, probably, especially in an election where the two major candidates aren't that popular. But if you don't have a record to show, if you don't have the sort of work you've done, like Ralph Nader, for instance. Ralph Nader had the record. Yeah, he'd never held public office before, but he had actually done shit before he ran for president. If you do that, then we can actually get to taking apart the two-party system. And as well as there's also ranked choice voting coming up in Maine in a referendum this year, which I'm very excited about and I hope passes, especially because Maine elections are infamous for having a lot of significant third-party candidates. For those of you who don't know, ranked choice voting is basically you put a number, 1 through whatever, of each candidate on the ballot, and the top 2 vote getters, the most people have the 2 candidates that have the most people saying, that's their first choice, go on to a second round, and then they do some wonky math as to how those preferences work out, and it's sort of an instant runoff in a sense, and then whoever is obviously the most preferred wins. That's how they do the elections for London mayor, which I think is probably the best way to vote. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Christian, are, but yeah, just if you want to see actual change, and if you do want to take down the 2-party system, you want people who really represent you, get involved and actually be an agent of community action rather than just, come up every 4 years just to run and make a lot of noise and get arrested a few times.
Yeah. Funny facts, though. One of the big reasons the Liberals got a lot of the, I think, got a large. It was something that ran on this election, but I imagine they got a good chunk of the NDP vote out of this. Was they said, look, if you vote for us, we will actually move to something like a ranked system. And everyone's like, okay, then, good. Electoral reform. We're for this. Major party supporting it. And they got in power like,
yeah, about that.
about that. Yeah.
Which is why, if you're gonna have something that shakes up the system that much, you need it in a referendum.
Yeah.
Like that's just the reality of it. Same thing with we saw that with Brexit. Like there's no way the European Parliament the British Parliament could have possibly voted one way or the other on that. They would have pushed it back because they wouldn't have been able to deal with the outcome of it. However that would work.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have something that big, you need it to be in a referendum. I'm not sure how referendums work in Canada. I know in the United States, there are state level stuff, which is kind of annoying. Although there is, constitutional amendment, that's always an option. But again, that process is pretty long and grueling too. But yeah, I'm excited. I hope that main ballot question passes, because it could be like recreational marijuana and assisted suicide and whatnot. It could be a domino effect. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to see that domino effect of all of them succeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so next big story of the week, really in the past few days, Barack Obama, completely different people. Well, he was out stumping for Hillary Clinton, his, handpicked successor, in North Carolina, and unfortunately he was interrupted by an elderly gentleman with a Trump sign, who also appeared to be a veteran, or at least a former serviceman. And the crowd was not kind to him. They were very, very unkind to him. They didn't hit him or anything, but he was escorted out by security. And here's the thing. President Obama, in his infinite class, not condescendingly, not mockingly, pointed the gentleman out and said, hey, this is not how we treat someone who has a different opinion than us. Yeah, we don't like Trump. Trump's a bad guy. But this gentleman isn't Trump. He's unfortunately the type of person that gets attracted by Trump, and we need to try to get those people back. And he's obviously a service member, so we have to respect that. So very, very nice, very great thing to do. You know what Trump did? At one of his rallies, he said President Obama screamed at the man.
What? Wow.
Again, people talk about Hillary Clinton being a liar. And in some respects, they're correct. She does stretch the truth, lie, change her position, whatever. At least she doesn't literally make shit up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump literally made that up. There is absolutely nothing that can support his claim. He just made it up. And you know what the worst part of that is that people believe it. People believe it. I kind of understand why, because they have such a visceral reaction to institutions. But seriously, what are people thinking? Why do people believe this man?
I don't know. I guess they don't. I think this is just in general, but they don't care They don't care at this point. It goes back to earlier when we were talking about how Trump, what was it, like 13% of the time is telling the truth? Was that number?
Yeah, something like that.
They just want him to win. I'm actually seeing like lines between a whole bunch of stories we did tonight. Like it's when Lanny Kosick said about Trump and his like comments about women. He's like, I know he said that, but I don't. But she was basically, I don't care though. You're missing the bigger picture. There's other things that I think are more important than like whether or not he tells the truth or whether or not he respects me and my rights. There's more important things. I think for a lot of Trump supporters, there's that, and the other element is their news sources are like, what is it? Not The Blaze. What's the other one there?
Breitbart.
Breitbart. Like if your news sources are like Breitbart, Breitbart's not going to tell you he lied. Breitbart's not going to do that. So then your main news source, so the guy you support said something. The main news source you go to said, didn't call him out, or they might even say what he said was true.
No. What they do is they use him as the source.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
They'll use him as the source.
And you don't care, and you being the third wheel in this, don't care if Breitbart's using Trump as the source for a story about what Trump said. So I think that's why it doesn't matter. And this is like a perfect example of how there's two different realities here. There's the real world, and then there's this alternate one that a lot of Trump supporters lived in, and they've been living in for a while. This isn't, they've just coalesced this time. That's all that's happened. But they've been living in this alternate world for some time now. And this alternate world is dangerous. This alternate world is what killed Acorn, for example. This is the alternate world that started a war against Planned Parenthood. And then they don't care because it's what I guess they don't question their news source and they don't question the politicians they like. So they're a very easily wielded army, and that makes them quite dangerous. The other thing, though, I do want to point out, and it's a more positive side on this, is this shows you rhetoric matters. This shows you why Obama, we can get into whether or not we agree with certain parts of his policy, what it was and is and was a good president. Because his rhetoric changed the culture in such a positive way. And a lot of people like to pretend that, words don't matter. But they do. This is a perfect example of words really do matter. This is why Obama supporters are not going to be as dangerous as Trump supporters, because Obama's going to be there at the center of the stage trying to be positive, like trying to send a positive message, trying to actually do good. And Trump's not doing that, and that's why he's dangerous. Rhetoric really matters.
It really does. And if one thing this election has proven, at least the general election, is that despite their best efforts, Republicans and Donald Trump have made me like President Obama and Secretary Clinton a lot more than I did before.
Yeah.
Like each time they try to throw something at them, it just makes me like them more.
Yeah.
Which is the reverse effect. But to go to your alternate reality point, unfortunately, I am friends with a few Trump supporters, and I hear and see them say a lot, oh, I can't wait to see Trump crush Clinton. What are you? No. The only way Donald Trump is winning is by a very, very slim margin.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of that happening is also in itself very slim.
Have you been on a pro-Trump Facebook page before?
I've avoided it very much. I've
You know
gotten
how
my
they
own dose.
you know how they do polling or what polls they post?
Internet
They're
polls.
they're like internet Facebook, put up a smiley face if you're supporting Trump and put up a crying face if you're supporting Clinton. Oh, will you look at that? Trump
Oh yeah,
dominated.
I forgot to rant about internet polls. That's right. So I'm just going to extend my rant from earlier again real quick. So another thing about polling is that internet polls have become sort of the new thing this election, kind of starting with the primaries way back about a year ago. And during the primaries, in almost all of those internet polls, Bernie Sanders destroyed Hillary. I mean, like 80-20, like just out of the water, mainly with post-debate polls.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't win. You know why? Because a lot of people who vote don't go on the internet that often. The internet, for all its wonder and all its extension across the world, is not the end-all be-all. It is not the perfect, great barometer for who gets elected. I was saying, this is part of what I was saying to Dave last night, Christian, is that it's, as much as people don't answer their phones as much as they used to anymore, that's still the best way to conduct a poll. Because when you're on the internet, especially with, audience, specific audience and ad targeting, the introduction of that into big moguls like Google and Facebook, you're bound to have a lot of areas, a lot of communities, a lot of different areas on the internet that have people with predominantly the same or similar opinions. That's, even if it, for instance, on Reddit and 4chan, in general, most people on there that go on there that are politically active like Trump. So any poll they conduct, most of the time, Trump is going to dominate. Why? Because that's the outlet. But if you actually do polls the I guess you could say the old-fashioned way, the better way, the more reliable way, you get a very different picture. And that's because we tend, as much as we self-segregate ourselves in real life, physically, we do it even more in an even more, sort of concentrated way on the internet, significantly so. And some of it isn't our own fault. A lot of it has to do with, our search results and the algorithms that go into that and blah, 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 like I said earlier. So, yeah, there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Rant over about internet polling.
There we go.
But yeah, you can't rely on them because even at that, there are people who still live in the bubble of, oh yeah, Trump's going to win because he's clearly the better candidate, which is odd. I've seen people even who are like, yeah, I don't like Trump or Clinton, but I guess I have to root for Trump, and he's going to dominate. What? No. There is very little data to support that. And this goes to the importance of having more than one source. Yeah, and then people say, oh, well, that source is flawed. Yeah, guess what? Every source is flawed. That's reality. You're not going to have a perfect source of anything at all, which is why you balance them out with different sources.
Alex
You have a
Jones is not flawed.
there's just that. Just please, regardless of your point of view, perspective, whatever, liberal, conservative, progressive, whatever you call yourself, have a multitude of sources and recognize the values and limitations of those sources.
I go to
That
Hannity
way,
and the Blaze, multiple sources.
oh my god.
Yeah.
But I won't go on MSNBC because those are commies, obviously.
They're biased. MSNBC's biased. Same thing as CNN.
Sean Hannity isn't, though. Sean Hannity isn't, though. Just have and be open to any new information, because there's going to be information out there that you don't like to hear, but it's reality. I didn't like to hear that Hillary Clinton had won the Democratic nomination when she did, but eventually I had to come to accept it because that's reality, and you can't deny that reality. There are many realities like that, i.e. climate change, like we were talking about earlier. So yeah, and the reality is Clinton's going to win, and more likely than not, it's going to be pretty significantly. Maybe not a blowout, but significantly. There's going to be no recount. It's not going to be a nail biter. Trump's not going to need election lawyers. He's going to need a therapist. Well, he's always needed a therapist, but he's going to especially need one on November 9th.
I was doing fine,
all right.
And this woman came along, just ruined everything like they always do. Anyway, continue.
So speaking of Alex Jones, this is a little side note I just wanted to include in this show. We have a few of these. But so let's see if I can screen share real quick. So Alex Jones, I don't know how I found this, but I found it, and it's glorious, because it seems like something that a troll would make, right? Something that not Alex Jones would make. Like, yeah, he's a silly man. He has silly views, and he's weird, right? But you'd think like someone trolling him would have made this, but no, he made it. This is his own creation, and it's horrifying. So let me see if I can screen share. If I remember how to screen share. Okay. I'm screen sharing, yes?
Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see it.
What?
Nothing.
So it says 2077, Baron Trump unleashes his Alex Jones clone army on the last remaining holdouts of the globalists. Their screams echo in eternity. What?
Poor Dave.
What?
Poor Dave is the one who liked it from your friend list. Here's the thing. Alex Jones says, no, it's satire. It's like, okay, I understand that's supposed to be a joke, but that's just really weird, man. I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to say. Because here's the thing about satire. It has to be removed enough from the actual positions you hold that it is that henceforth funny. Because in your case, that just comes off as like a fantasy you have.
Well, see, here's the thing. This also happened, which makes me very much question that it's satire. And hopefully 1 second. I have to do some fancy smanchy mechanics right now. But hopefully you'll be able to hear. Oh, ah. Okay.
People are so evil. Why can't America wake up and meet them? Donald Trump's not perfect, but he doesn't want to hurt you and your family. Hillary and Obama want to make you poor and pathetic. We have all their white papers. They hate you. They hate prosperity. They hate God. They hate children. And goddamn them they all. I know we're going to find the lever to beat these people, Heather. They're going to beat me. Look at her sharp face. And to look at her with that demon face. That's a freaking demon. We're going to have President Linda Blair, people. And I'm not going to go along with it. Excuse me.
Alley Al.
Yeah. So that happened.
Yeah.
And the man who supposedly made that satire also said that.
Yeah. As I said, it's too close to something he would actually talk. He's going on in his show about, you know, how the globalists have the life extension technology. You know, so I don't know. Sounds like something he would actually say. That's the problem.
Okay.
Fun facts though about Alex Jones though, like he has no viewership. Like when you actually look at how many people see his videos, it's like 500 people on a good day. So I'm not too.
That's almost worse than us.
Yeah.
See, and so one of my friends once asked, to continue our discussion on sources, asked why I should value the New York Times over Alex Jones. My response being, because the New York Times has editors who graduated from schools like Harvard and Yale, very prestigious institutions. Therefore, the news they put out, the sources they gather, the information they gather, is most likely accurate, well-founded, well-made, etc., etc. You know where Alex Jones graduated from? Austin, Texas Community College. Now, I'm not, bashing Austin, Texas Community College. I'm sure it's a fine institution. But when it comes to news, when it comes to getting information, whether it's about the globe or your town or whatever, which would you rather trust? An organization, a newspaper run by people who have attended some of the most rigorous, well-made, well-rounded, well-established schools in the world, or someone who has an associate's degree in, like, plumbing from a community college?
Well, the community college guy ain't going to be controlled by the globalists, so I know who I'm going for.
That's the thing. That's the thing about their reality, is that it is self-sustaining. It is, it's, no matter how you try to get past it, every single thing can be explained by their worldview. It's like a religion.
Yep.
It's like an extreme religion. It's, no matter how you try to get around it, there's an excuse for everything.
Yep.
Fill in Alex Jones here. Fill in globalists here. Rather than fill in God here or fill in the will of God here, it's fill in globalists here, fill in the Bilderbergs there.
That's how it works. It's powerful. I think this is perhaps part of the odd reason you'd think the left would be more powerful in the US, but it isn't. It's simply that you're so caught up trying to get things right while the other side's just like appeal to emotion. Okay, we got it. You're playing with one hand tied behind your back at all times. It's actually funny because my dad was that I was talking to my dad about this, and he proposed the end. Well, maybe you shouldn't spend so much time, or maybe, well, not me in particular, but the Democrats writ large should just stop spending so much time trying to be right and spend a lot more time just trying to win. I was like, that's horrifying, but that might be the case.
Well, if we win, we could actually get shit done.
Yep.
You know, that reminds me of Bruno Gianelli's, I think it's season 3 pep talk in The West Wing, which I'm not going to play because I already played one YouTube video in this episode. But go watch it if you can. Just type in, Bruno Gianelli rant, and you'll find it. And basically, he goes, I could probably say it verbatim, but he says, Republicans hammer us over and over again, and what we say is, we cower in the corner and say, please don't hurt me. When what we should really be saying is, hey, you absolute lunatics who just want to take us back to the Stone Age, you guys can go ahead and have your fun with, trying to find out what fire does over in some other country where we're going to be actually running it here and, helping people. And I was like, I'd like if Democrats talked more like that.
Yeah.
And the good thing is campaign mode Obama and campaign mode Hillary typically do that, which is a good sign, which is something I like. But there are often way too many, especially down-ticket Democrats, who don't act like that. And they need to. Because, you should be savvy, you should be polite, you should be decent. But when your opponents are just foaming at the mouth, going absolutely rabid crazy, making all these crazy accusations against you, the only way you can respond is by saying, hey, you're a little man. You're freaking out because your positions are bad. If we actually have a discussion on the issues, you will lose, and you will always lose because you're a little person.
Yep.
And if we had more people who said that, Democrats would be winning elections left and right everywhere.
Yep.
Both senators from Utah would be Democrats. If Democrats acted more like that.
Yeah.
But they don't.
They don't.
Speaking of Republicans that act like that, though, Chris Christie, two of his top aides, this is a story from I believe Politico broke it. Mm-hmm. At least that's where I first saw it. And it's not loading right now. Great. But basically, two of his former staffers, they have been indicted. Here we go. And now convicted. Found guilty on all charges in the Bridgegate scandal. They are Bill Baroni, and then he's with his two attorneys. Here we go. Bill Baroni, a former top official at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. So, not necessarily part of the Christie administration, but, he's responsible for shutting down the bridge, essentially, actually doing the deed. And then Bridget Ann Kelly, his former deputy chief of staff, which is pretty high up. So they were indicted in May on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and civil rights violations, and face up to 20 years in prison. Jesus. And they were found guilty. So far, Christie himself, I don't believe has been indicted, and I don't believe has been, charged or anything, obviously, yet. But he also happens to chair Trump's, if it's necessary, though it won't be, White House transition team. But don't worry, guys. Clinton's the more corrupt one.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's definitely the more, it's apples and apples. Like, what? How can you pick one? It's just so hard.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Like, yeah, I don't even know. Oh well. I guess there's some justice though. He's done and she wins, so we can at least take that.
The thing that made me really happy about this is that these people might end up just being fall guys, and Christie might never ever face anything. Although that's kind of that's not without precedent. New Jersey has had a bad history lately with governors.
Yeah.
And there has been a governor, I believe, who had to resign because he went to jail.
Yeah.
And I think another one after that, too. So it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. But even so, this is, Christie went from being a very, significant rising star in the Republican Party to absolutely dead in the water. He's done. No matter how you look at it, it's over for him.
You have to imagine, though, that was inevitable, though, with Christie. Like, there's no way that was what he was sustainable.
Well, that's the thing is that, with the Sandy thing, I remember I made a video about this. It might have gotten deleted, but about the Sandy Hook thing. He got heckled because some cities weren't getting the funding they needed. We later found out that's because he withheld Sandy relief money from Democratic mayors who didn't support his reelection campaign, which is tied to the Bridgegate scandal.
Mm-hmm.
That happened, and people heckled him, and he's just like, "Hey, man, you weren't on the front lines, I was," which doesn't make any sense at all.
That Republican military kind of imagery, I guess.
Yeah.
They like.
Well, and people cheered Chris Christie for that, but yeah, there's no way he could have sustained that for long. Even if all this didn't happen, if something else came up, like there's one thing being tough, right?
Yeah.
Even in New Jersey, but there's a whole nother thing when you're tough and you're wrong.
Yeah.
And you're wrong. You can't sustain that forever.
Exactly.
Speaking of being tough and wrong, I'm just trying to get through all these stories before we head out because we should be ending relatively soon. Goodbye, Mr. Speaker? ? Chatter's been growing. This is from a Hill article. Chatter's growing louder on Capitol Hill that Paul Ryan's days as Speaker are numbered. Now, this always happens, but let's see. So obviously, he's saying he's not going to back down. He says he's good. Like, it's fine. However, quote from one senior GOP lawmaker, speculation is growing that Paul will not return. Okay, geez, that's scary for him.
Yeah.
The lawmaker continued, those who talk to Paul say that he's all in to stay as Speaker. But if you talk to members from the South, many will struggle to vote for him, even though they like him, because their constituents are furious over his treatment of Trump. So the article basically says that, Paul Ryan's relatively well liked in the GOP conference. Most people like him there. In fact, almost all of the conference likes him. However, because of Ryan's sort of back and forth with supporting Trump, not supporting Trump, being sort of neutral about it and whatnot, well, a lot of GOP voters like Trump 45% of them voted for him in the primary. A significant amount of them will vote for him in the general election. And to have a Speaker of the House who is, if a President Trump is elected, or even if he isn't, to have a Speaker of their own party who is opposed to him to one degree or another is very, 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 very does not sit well with those people. And honestly, that's so. This kind of gets into parliamentary politics, and I don't know how often this may have happened in Canada or talks of it. But what's your take on this in terms of, since you're more used to parliamentary politics, I guess?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me about this isn't even necessarily a parliamentary or not parliamentary thing. It's just, I've heard a lot from different Republicans who I know. They're like, well, you see, this isn't representative of what Republicans are like, though. This is weird. I don't know what. No. This is the Republicans. This might not be John McCain, for example. He's a Republican but this is largely what the Tea Party movement, I think, ultimately is at the end. And I think for the most part, most of the Republican Party is now that. It's the same thing when you see interviews of people who are like, well, I was a Democrat, but then we have elected a black man to president. Like, that's like I'm not even like paraphrasing. That's effectively what people say. So the thing to understand is that I think his days are numbered, if only because he failed to, I guess, recognize or understand that he couldn't control this growing kind of coalescence of racist and otherwise sort of disgusting beliefs. Either that, or he like thought he could control them, and he was wrong. And I think even aside from the whole whether or not he supported Trump element, I think he really should leave, because that shows some degree of incompetence at that job. But it is interesting to note. It's funny when you look at Trump supporters, they'll often blame him for Trump not winning. There's even this ongoing conspiracy theory that the tape of the whole grabbed her by the pussy tape was Paul Ryan's doing in Trump circles. So
of course.
Yeah. So yeah. That's all I can really. That's sort of my prevailing thought on this.
Yeah, the role of Speaker of the House is much like a prime minister, and in more parliamentary systems, and like the prime minister, they're supposed to lead.
Yeah,
they're supposed to be the voice of the party.
Yeah.
And if you can't be the voice of the party, and you can't corral your party, especially with a runaway constituency, as we are seeing now, then it's better, I think, right now, for Paul Ryan just to step down. Just to say, not to resign, but just to say, hey, with this new speakership election coming up, I'm not going to run again.
Yeah.
And let a Trumpite win. Or a Trumpite run, because even if he faces a Trumpite that goes against him and he wins somehow, whatever happens, just let's say, going into 2017, Paul Ryan's still the leader of the Republicans, still either the House Minority Leader or the Speaker of the House, more likely the Speaker of the House. Even if he goes into this having survived sort of a coup, kind of like what happened with John Boehner before he stepped down, that doesn't mean that you have a mandate.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth sailing from there on out. Same thing with those elections. After November 9th, these Trump people aren't going to go away.
Yeah.
They're going to remain significantly, and we're still going to have a very significant social and political divide in this country. And it's very unfortunate, but that's the reality. Unfortunately, this doesn't go away after literally overnight. It just doesn't. That's just not going to happen. Same thing with Paul Ryan. It's not going to just go away. He's going to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And unless the constituencies change their mind and there's some sort of moderate Republican revolution in 2018, he's screwed.
Doubt for so many reasons.
Oh, no, yeah, it's not going to happen. It's just simply not going to happen.
Yeah.
Just wishful thinking. It's just, an idea, but it's not going to happen. And I honestly don't see any good way out of this for Paul Ryan unless he cozies up to Trump. If he doesn't cozy up to Trump and Trumpites, his constituency, then he has no mandate to lead. And he's going to have to step aside one way or the other in order to have a mildly effective Congress, or at least mildly effective GOP in Congress, in order to get the stuff done that he wants to see done. Because it's not, with these people, it's not enough that they agree on a lot of issues. It's simply not enough. They need complete and absolute loyalty, which I'll get into for my video which I'll probably make either tomorrow or on Tuesday, talking about dictatorship and how if you support Trump, you're more likely to want authoritarian dictatorship. Yay.
Yay.
Which is a bit redundant, but you know what I mean.
I knew what you meant.
Speaking of Congress, though, I saw a great video. So earlier this election, a bunch, and I mean a bunch, literally over 100 people, who have had some connection to Star Trek, whether it's stars of the show, recurring characters, character actors, whatever, producers, formed a group for this election called Trek Against Trump, in which it's people from Star Trek who are opposed to Donald Trump, mainly because Donald Trump opposes literally everything that Star Trek stands for.
Yeah.
So it's logical to be against him, which is why Bruce McGill is for him is very odd. But they made this absolutely beautiful video, which I will link in the comments after this, after we go off the air, in which Chris Pine plays Congress as your coworker.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly amusing. It is so funny. It's great. And at the end, the video says, he's so obnoxious, he's so awful. And it says, obviously you couldn't deal with this guy as your coworker. So why are you letting Congress act like this?
Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful. So I just wanted that play. Have you gotten a chance to watch it yet, Christian?
No, I haven't. I'll have to do that when we're done.
All right. Well, yeah, I just wanted to leave that one more plug in before we go because we are drastically over time.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts real quick?
Vote, please. Please vote.
Yes, please vote. Thank you. Thank you for yes, please vote. If you're not part of the 20% of the country who hasn't voted early yet, then go vote on election day. I will be. Please go do that because it's very important. Even if you don't like the candidates running for president, any of them at all, at least vote in down-ticket races. Those are also very important. Politics is more than just the presidential election. It's Congress. If you have a U.S. senator up for re-election, if you have a state senator, state rep, mayor, city councilor, school board, anything, please, for the love of God, vote. And you don't hear me say that often. Please vote. It's important that you do. Because how I was talking about earlier, you need to get involved in the community. You have to do some community action. The best way you can get involved in the community and be part of that community action is to vote. You should do more than that, but it's a good first step.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys very much. We hope to see you on Tuesday, definitely on Sunday, but hopefully on Tuesday as well. We hope you all have a good night. Don't be too anxious on Tuesday. Again, go vote. And as always, have malice toward none.